In this episode of The Full Nerd, Threadripper Bombshell, Ryzen 3, and Where is Vega? Welcome to The Full Nerd, episode 26, recorded on July 18, 2017. I'm your host, Gordon Maung, with co-host Brad Charkis.
Hey, y'all.
Who just got here from his second job at the airport. He's saving up money, working at the airport. Reviews editor, Elena Yee.
Hey,
sorry,
everybody.
we've been rusty. We apologize. We know we've been gone for, it feels like about 4 weeks. But, you know, there's that little thing about the Independence Day of the greatest nation on the planet. Somewhere, and also vacation. And Elaine, in fact, was supposed to be in jury duty today, but she's skipping it. So hopefully the judge is not watching it.
Not
like
really.
In the chambers, the judge is like, "Oh, let me check this out. I want to check out this hot new Threadripper news. Hey, wait a minute, it says juror 15."
I am not shirking my civic duty.
Sure,
Civic
sure.
duty has yet to call me.
Okay, but of course that does bring us cleverly to the topic of the day. Wait, is Adam holding his finger up saying stop talking?
No, we're good.
No, we are good. Threadripper, I'm describing it as a bombshell. It's because, of course, I was wrong. But Threadripper pricing, insane, right, Brad?
I wasn't. Yeah, no, it's not that insane.
Brad got it
reasonably
right.
minded people could have seen it coming.
Brad's sitting pretty because, I mean, if you go back and watch the tape, he even says, I got it wrong with Ryzen 7. I'm going to recalibrate, and here's my prediction, and bam.
Well,
spot
first,
on.
Brad, what is the actual price?
There is the 16-core 32-thread chip is $1,000 on the nose. And there's also a 12-core chip that is $800, I believe.
$790. It's a $799. Let's not. Oh, come on.
$799.
What is your bias there, Brad? Trying to make it seem like it's overpriced at $800. It's $799.
Which is insane. Remember, just last year we were paying $1,700 for 10-core chips.
$1,723 for
Just last year, we were predicting 800 for the Ryzen 7 top of the line chip.
Some of us. Some of
not
us got it right, though.
I'm just saying, some of us are thinking it could go as high as that, just given the fact that the Intel's 10-core chip was so astronomically expensive.
You know, I swear it, though. I thought I had guessed $1,000 at one point, and then I think I had raised it.
When you raised it.
No, I mean, maybe 2 months ago. I think I'd guessed 1,000, and then I started raising it to like 1,400.
You second guessed yourself.
Well, it's because after Intel came out with their 18, 16, 14, 12, 10 parts, right? So Core i9 and all the Skylake X stuff. I was like, I think AMD might be comfortable at that. I guessed 1,400, so I was way off. What do you remember what you guessed at all?
I think I came in around 11 or 1,200.
I got to say, like $1,000 for 16 cores. Is this the right price? Are they underpricing it, or are they just anticipating where Intel's going to end up eventually?
I mean, we haven't seen performance yet, so it could also be tied to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Sorry, that's the thing. That's what I was saying when I was doing the price predictions. I wouldn't be surprised if they have to price it like that, because looking at how, Ryzen performs compared to Kaby Lake, it's a little bit behind in IPC. So you would expect that, Threadripper will be behind Skylake X in IPC as well, if not more. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little slower in single threads. So they kind of got to make up for it with the multi-threads, the lower pricing. You know what I mean?
yeah, but so let me just give you the official specs. So the full name Ryzen Threadripper 1950X, 16 cores, 32 threads, 3.4 gigahertz base clock, 4 gigahertz on, whatever the boost is. I don't know exactly how many cores, whatever, but that's $999. Number 2 part, Ryzen Threadripper 1920X, 12 cores, 24 threads with SMT, and 3.5 gigahertz, a little higher bump on there on that base clock, and then a 4 gigahertz on all cores at $799. That's a pretty decent base clock. I mean, especially compared to Skylake X. I mean, they're not giving up too much, but you're still getting so many more cores. I mean, this is for $999. Intel's giving you i9 7800X, right? So that's their 10-core part, and you're getting 16 out of them.
And again, just last year, I mean, 10 core we were paying $1,700 for. That was the top of the line. This year, we're talking about 16 cores in consumer-ish desktops. So that's pretty insane. That's a pretty big jump year over year.
I mean, especially for somebody like me who can use all the extra cores, I'm pretty excited for those prices, especially because we had just built those boxes for Broadwell E. And then people in the chat are saying, hey, $1,000, people are excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, just what, 4 years ago you were paying that?
Whoops. Oh, man. I am messing up left and right.
Is that a
I'm
laugh
sorry.
track? See, we go away for a month and Adam loses it.
Hitting all the wrong
He
buttons.
hasn't done his vacation yet.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm just thinking back to, like, we were paying $1,000 for Ivory Bridge E, like in 2014, right? 4 years ago, and it was like, you getting that, and that is a 6-core chip with hyperthreading. So like 12 threads for $1,000. And now we were talking about possibly, in a couple months getting a 16-core chip for $1,000. That's insane. That's insane.
Which one's more appealing to you two? Or are you three, I guess? Sorry, Adam.
Wow.
16 or 12 core?
And Noah here, too. Don't forget about Noah.
Yes, no.
I'm sorry. I just didn't think you'd be spending money on $1,000 part yet.
He's got to save up for it.
I know.
As a gamer, neither one of them are appealing to me because, I'm much more focused on lower end stuff. But if you need something that needs a lot of cores, $1,000 for 16 cores is pretty compelling. It depends totally on your budget, I would think, and what you're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I do like a high core count, so the $1,000 part really does appeal to me. Of course, I got kids; they're in school. This is not.
This is in your dream world where you have unlimited money again.
But again, if I were, clearly, if you are somebody who needs, if you do Premiere, you do 3D rendering, you do work at home as a contractor or whatever, and then you're also a gamer, it's like $4,000, 16 cores, 32 threads. It's a.
So you take the 4 extra cores.
Yeah. I mean, because it's only, look, it's $800 for $200. You get like 4 more cores.
Well, you're getting a whole
8 more threads.
You're getting a whole other CPU, really.
Yeah. It's like, we're give you a Ryzen 7 in here. That's like, yeah, no, wait.
What I'm looking forward to is getting the 1920X and pairing it with a GTX 1080 to have the ultimate 1080 gaming machine. Because it's 1920 by 1080.
Oh.
Okay, I'll stop talking.
Nice.
Okay, it took a while to process that one. That is so.
We're sitting here, we're taking you super seriously. Like, well, do you mean like 144 refresh rate? Like, is it like multi-monitor setup? No, it's just the part numbers.
That actually would be a good build, though, Brad.
That'd be
you could
fun.
do the 1920X by 1080 build.
Nice. Hey, we got a quick question from YouTube. Ruru2's asking, what's the boost clock on those i9 18 cores? Do we know?
There are no clocks disclosed on the 12, 14, 16, or 18 core parts yet, so no one knows. We do know, although I don't have it in front of me, we do know the 10 core part, right? So, wait, 7920X? Oh, no, wait, they didn't. Oh, holy smokes. It's on the price list. Mm-hmm. So the base clock of the 12 core part, I swear, I don't think they've disclosed this publicly, is 2.9 gigahertz. I don't know what the boost is, though. I'll have to, nope. My God, they put it on the price list, but they have not announced this to the media what the base clock of that 12 core part is. So again, look at this. This is an Intel 12 core. Oh, hey, we're breaking news right now. Core i9 7920X, 16.5 megs of cache, 12 cores, 24 threads, 2.9 gigahertz base clock. So that is going to be going up against, and that is at $1,189. It's not $1,200. It's $1,189. That is going to be, yeah.
They haven't said that before. I haven't heard any of those.
I know. That's like Gordon is saying. He's like, holy smokes, it's on the price sheet.
I just printed it out this morning, so we'd actually have something to talk about.
This is publicly available.
Yes, this is Intel's price list effective July 14th, 2017. You're here. This just in. Core i9 7920X. Yeah. 2.9 gigahertz base clock.
Wow, that's it.
Going up against, we're looking at a 1950X against a 3.4 base clock.
Dang.
So 500 megahertz difference on base clock. So that
It's pretty sizable.
that's pretty sizable. And you're looking at Skylake. Of course, it's not the same core as in Skylake, but you're looking at the new Ring Bus. You're looking at Skylake versus a Ryzen. That's a tough ball game. I mean,
Well, it also makes you wonder if the Threadripper chips are going to have boost on multiple cores.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't know any of the details of it. We just know,
Right, because then Intel can at least say, yeah, we have a lower base clock, but you get the boost on multiple cores, whereas this could just be on that one primary
Right.
core.
Although, and I've said, one thing that's nice about Skylake X and, previously Broadwell E is you could say, I want to dial up, a 4-core overclock. That is not easy to do on Ryzen, but a viewer, reader, internet commenter said, hey, you can do it if you go into the BIOS and you sort of like manually jiggle stuff around so that you can sort of hit these individual cores.
Wait for the wind to be in the right direction.
It's not really a feature that is being presented right now. Clearly, Ryzen 7 launch wasn't exactly smooth. A lot of this stuff was pretty kind of, pretty rough. So maybe it's something they can bake it into a future version. But
They've been coming a long way on stability, though. That a GISA 1006 with the RAM timings, it's a huge difference.
it boots in less than 2 minutes.
Yes.
That was definitely a problem with very, very, very early boards. So actually, has it gotten better? I know the Ryzen 5 box I had wasn't too bad. So
The motherboard I had, it wasn't too much of an issue at all. So.
yeah. Okay.
So
I think that's interesting to me about this Threadripper stuff is that they're coming out in August, and all the high-end Intel parts aren't coming out till October. So
Well,
they're gonna have
yeah. Go ahead, Brad. Sorry.
they're gonna have everything themselves for at least a couple of months.
Yeah, and I know, and it is a little scary if you're an Intel fan, like Intel is not, or an Intel investor, that they have not announced, final clocks on those higher end parts too, because the 12 core is going to come out sooner rather than later. So the 12 will come out, I'm going to guess, in a couple months, and then the other ones, the 18, 16, 14, we're talking all the way down in October. But looking at that base clock on this 12 core part, that is just like meh. That's like Xeon. That's like a Xeon base clock there. It's like like 2 gigahertz or something like that. It's not pretty. This really doesn't make the 18, 16, 14 look like they're going to be launching at super high clocks. Especially they're going up against 3-4 Ryzen Threadripper.
And that pricing.
And the pricing, right? The pricing is the pricing is definitely the gut punch, I think, more than anything. So, because clock speed doesn't always trump core count. Sometimes core count really does make a big difference. So,
Especially for the kind of applications you'd use this for. So
yeah.
Samsonite Dove on YouTube is saying that AMD stated that 4 gigahertz boost on all cores. But he's getting some sources on that.
Yeah, I would imagine, because that's the way Ryzen previously has worked, is all core. It's an all core overclock, so it's not a per core overclock. But yeah, I think the person previously was asking for the boost clock on a 79 on the high end parts, and no one knows. No one knows what the base clocks are. No one knows what the boost clocks are. So that's our problem. But yeah, I don't. Do you guys think? Clearly we don't know. We don't have Threadripper. We don't have high end Core i9. Is this over already?
Over as in like
no,
the war is over?
No. Well,
It's all theoretical at this point. We don't have anything in our hands.
But just looking at we know what Ryzen 7, we know what Ryzen 5 does. You get, IPC is, Broadwell-ish range. Some things almost Haswell looking, but $1,000, pretty high base clock, and 2 months earlier. Is Intel really going to sell a 16-core Skylake X to somebody for, I don't know, what do they want? $1,800? I forget what it is. It's $1,800. I think it's $1,800
or seven.
Yep.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
It's right around there. At that point, it's like, what does it matter, right?
Yeah.
So I just don't know who's really going to be buying it at that point.
I think it'll be like the same as Ryzen with the core chips. Like Ryzen excels at a bunch of things, but if you want if you need the best gaming chip, you still want the 7700K. It excels in IPC and clock speed and everything.
Right.
And we don't know yet, but I have if Intel is able to get that IPC advantage somehow. It doesn't look like it necessarily at 2.9 gigahertz.
No.
If they're able to get that somehow in these higher end chips, then there could still be a compelling case for them to be a lot of cores and a lot of IPC. It's going to totally depend on the specs.
Yeah. No.
But Ryzen's is looking, Threadripper's looking pretty good at this point. They're putting their best foot forward, that's for sure.
I think for the market they're targeting, which would be, you know, like Atom, it's going to be a much easier sell in that regard. But I think in terms of general populace, people who are just watching the space in general, I don't know if it's going to be necessarily a slam dunk for them.
Yeah, I don't know though. So like when Ryzen 7 came out, you know, in the months and months and months of build up to that, and then all the performance benchmarks, I sort of thought like this Ryzen 7, if they came in at the price and performance they were going to do, it was over. They were going to obliterate Intel. Like it'd be, you know, 9 times out of 10 people are going to buy Ryzen. But when it finally came out, we ended up with this weird thing like, oh, if you want high IPC, again, as Brad just said, you do 7700, right?
Okay.
If you want PCIe lanes, then you got to go Broadwell E, because you still could get, you know, 40 PCIe lanes. And there was still room for Intel. I mean, there were a lot of really, as much as fanboys hate it, there were a lot of really valid reasons why you would want to buy an Intel part, you know, 2 months ago over a competing Ryzen part. With Threadripper, I don't know. You're looking at 64 PCIe lanes, so that whole PCIe lane thing is out the window now. And then you're getting a hell of a lot more cores for like half the price almost, right? So what maybe the IPC is the only thing they got left, but really if you're doing 3D rendering, you'll give up that IPCs for access to 16 cores. So.
I mean, I'd say what they have left right now is legacy, right?
Well,
I mean,
yeah, no one got fired for buying Intel, right?
Yeah. People are still invested in, you know, those motherboards. They're still invested in feeling like, oh, hey, you know, Intel's been around long enough and they haven't burned me, you know, in some ways that maybe AMD has. So, I mean, I think even if this stuff, you know, does great, it's still going to take a while, you know, for it to be over, even though the chat says it's over.
Yeah, I mean, the motherboards, you got to get a new motherboard to get into Core i9, and X299 has not been as smooth and stable as previous Intel launches have either.
True.
So that's really not a selling point for them anymore either.
No, definitely not.
You also have to pick what level of support you want for RAID and whatnot too.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I'm going to give you the secret. There's a big announcement I'm going to give you on VROC, Intel's RAID. Big announcement in a few minutes. You'll have to wait for it though. That's how critical that information is. No, but I don't know. I gotta say, I just don't see my. Well, you know, you're definitely right. So let's be honest. Even if you're an AMD fanboy, whatever, you got to admit it has not been smooth on Ryzen 7 motherboards. It has just not been smooth. It's like you bought basically a beta BIOS and beta board, and it's being improved almost weekly. You never got that with, you know, Z270. That was like rock solid from day one. You know, 2011 V3, totally rock solid. I don't. So X299, not great, but definitely a lot of the features that you sort of look for in a very high-end, expensive motherboard were there. The LEDs and all the other cool, you know, bling and the M.2 and I mean, they were still very polished boards. Certainly not rock solid as previous launches, but that's got some value, right? Did I just ramble on into the weeds there? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're going to be using like chips like these, they're probably going to be used for professional applications, and their stability is key. So
right. So yeah, hopefully AMD does get X399 buttoned down before it gets out to people.
You know, we got a lot of people in the YouTube chat talking about heat. You know, about saying, hey, you know, what is Threadripper going to do in terms of heat dissipation, but also that i9, you know, has definitely been hot. What's been your experience on the i9 boards? So
I basically have not had a chance to get back to i9, but I can tell you everything I've read at this point. It is, and I don't know if this is just being unfair, but at this point, people are calling it, you know, like, you know, Skylake Gate or thermal paste gate. So basically, these things run really hot. The upshot is everybody who has built 7900 Xboxes, and they're like, man, these things are really hot. I read something where somebody was saying that if you want to run this thing, just base clock, no overclock, you need, you know, a CLC, a high end CLC. Not high end, but like you need a decent $100 CLC. You're not doing this on the $35 CLC budget ones. I haven't actually tried, but I will say one thing that is telling is typically around a launch, a lot of vendors will line up and say, "Hey, dude, I want you to look at this machine. We got a Skylake X. We're running this baby up at 5 gigahertz or whatever." I ain't got one, right? So I haven't heard peep from the usual places. ASUS usually comes out with a grading report. They will take 50 CPUs and they will overclock them. They're experts, and they are experts, certified experts at overclocking. And they will we're going to figure out where these things are going to overclock, what you're going to get out of this chip, what should you realistically expect. And they do this so they can build their own overclocking curves in the motherboards. I haven't seen anything. So clearly, everybody not saying a thing, nobody sending us systems. There may be a problem here on high overclocks to Skylake X. And, this may go back to the thermal paste issue that everybody is paste gate.
What kind of temps are we talking about?
Hot and a lot of power.
It's like
There's been an issue. There's an overclocking. DeBower's his name. He's actually very well renowned in overclocking, and he's had an issue clocking X299 boards. And he says a lot of the motherboards are actually under-designed, and the VRMs even are getting way over hot because of it. So it's not just the CPU. It seems to be an issue all around.
Yeah,
though, like
delivery.
Gordon, I haven't tested it myself.
Yeah, but I think clearly there's problems. I don't know what they are, but again, I don't want to give the last word on that. But yeah, there's a lot of static there, and definitely heat is an issue. I think if you are going to run, base clock, no overclocking, I think it's fine. It's really when you get to the overclocking thing. But I don't know. The silence from motherboard vendors and system vendors does make you worry a little bit, right? Go ahead.
Well, and what the question I have then is what can AMD do for Threadripper in terms to make that better?
Well, for the most part, Ryzen has run pretty, for power and for heat, it's been pretty good. Almost better than what Intel's had. So I think they're in pretty good shape. I will say one thing we didn't disclose on Threadripper is the TDP, right? It's a 180 watt TDP part. So is that worst case scenario or whatever? So they're planning. Of course, that also could be a holdover from Naples. Naples is a server workstation part. That may just be their TDP spec from Naples for the 32
It's less than a
core part.
9590.
Yeah. yeah, which is insane. What is it 9590 TDP? 200 plus, right?
20 something.
Yeah.
oh gosh, how times have changed.
Yeah, that is
But the thing is about that TDP is that it's 180 watts, which they didn't come out and disclose, but they put it in the footnotes at the end of their benchmarking YouTube video. And Intel's Core i9 is theoretically 150 watts, at least the 7900X. But in reality, when people have been testing even just non-overclocked versions of the 7900X, they find that it actually uses way more energy, way more power than you would expect. So
yeah. I was reading something where they think some of the issues with Skylake X relate to really immature BIOSes. Like everybody they don't know how to run these chips. But I got to say, this launch you want to talk about, I was talking to a system vendor and he was like, yeah, Ryzen launch, not great, right? Ryzen 7 was kind of a mess in a lot of ways. And Intel came along and basically said, oh, yeah, we could do worse than that. X299.
Everything's a competition.
Yeah, they're like, we're going to be better than making a worse launch than you, AMD. I remember up to the day I was writing the review, people were like, I was talking to vendors, they didn't know what clocks the thing was even supposed to run at. They did not know what the base, it was not Core i9 and X299 was just a disaster pretty much. So, and that's a result of this thing wasn't going to come out till October. Hey, you need to push this thing out in July, so that makes it hard on everybody. And
Well, if you don't have competition for a long time, I think you get a little complacent with your ability to move quickly.
God, the thing is, I'm trying
Maybe
to.
complacent's a little harsh, but you're just not used to it.
No, this is like the perfect timing for AMD. This is who knows? It's hard to believe that history repeats itself this way. Because if you think about it, going all the way back to Pentium 3, basically it was PAX Intel. No one, like, they'd run everybody out of business. Cyrex, everybody, Winchip, like nobody existed. It was just still AMD. Like, oh my God, but Intel started looking at other empires. Like they wanted to be Cisco. They wanted to be all these other things. And then AMD came along with Athlon. Is like, punched them right in the face, right? And then
I switched.
Right. And then Athlon, it was like Athlon, then Athlon XP. And, P3 just could not compete with Athlon. And then everybody was like, well, hey, we got Pentium 4 coming. Right? Holy smokes. It's like Battlestar Galactica. We've already seen this already before. Pentium 4 was like, I swear to God, I like telling the story. So like back then I was talking to an analyst, and I don't want to date myself, but I'm talking to this analyst, and we're like, it's like, yeah, man, Athlon is just lumping up P3. But he was like, but Intel's got Pentium 4 coming. Do we really believe Intel has spent $1 billion to be slower than AMD? And we're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, this is Intel here, right? How could they come? Oh my God, they spent $1 billion to be slower than AMD. Pentium 4 came out, I was like, that was just not bad code. Couldn't hit the clocks they wanted to, and then and then went on to Prescott, which ran hot as hell, right? So just like a lot of this sounds very similar. And AMD went on from Athlon to Athlon XP, and then then FX, and then just like.
Then,
Well, and then finally, oh God, it took like, 4 years for Intel to finally come back from that? 3 years, maybe? So is it possible we're going to see like AMD just basically beating up on Intel for the next 3 to 4 years because they caught them flat-footed all over again,
maybe in the high end, but I don't think the mainstream we're going to see necessarily that.
That is a fantastic segue, actually, because it's been 28 minutes on this. Wait, did I break up I'm not going to. I was going to talk about, here's the big VROC news. There ain't none. This product launched, a month ago? I ask Intel every time, what's up with your crazy RAID stuff? What's the pricing? Nothing. So that tells you what's up, right?
Crickets.
So, crickets, nothing but crickets. Oh, no, dead crickets, because they're making too much noise. But I want to segue us into the next topic, unless Adam, this is the burning Threadripper questions. The next topic, though, so Elena, you just brought up that the mainstream thing.
It's like I knew.
You knew. It's like you knew what the next topic was. Oh, that's right, because it's right there. It just moved. Ryzen 3 details. AMD has announced 3 Ryzen parts. Brad actually knows more than this because he actually read the stuff. I just kind of like, huh? Brad, what are the details here?
All right. So AMD announced 2 Ryzen 3 chips, and they're actually launching next week on the 27th. The Ryzen 3 1200 has a 3.1 gigahertz base clock, and it can go up to 3.4. Whereas the Ryzen 3 1300X hums between 3.5 gigahertz and 3.7 gigahertz. But the big news is they're both true quad-core chips. So Core i3 chips are dual-core with hyperthreading. AMD's Ryzen 3 chips are going to be true quad-cores. So that's really interesting.
But they're for no SMT, though, right?
No SMT, no hyperthreading, but it's not hyperthreading, it's SMT. They didn't technically disclose in the consumer version, like the TDPs and stuff, but they actually kind of snuck it in to Ryzen Pro launch a few weeks back, and those rated them at 65 watt TDP. So I would expect the consumer version to be the same. The one thing they didn't mention whatsoever is price. So that's still the question mark with it coming a week from now.
What I want to note, though, is construction. Do we know anything about how these things are made? Because, Ryzen 5, 7 are, two parts with a fabric.
I'm not sure. I believe the whole idea was to keep using the dual CCX design, but I'm not 100% sure. That's not official information. Don't quote me on that.
Okay. But I guess it makes sense, though, because they have their full Ryzen 7 parts, 8 cores, and they have 2 full working CCXs, right? So 4 connected with the fabric. And then you do Ryzen 5, where you have, 2 CCXs with one of the bad cores that, failed on the assembly line. Now we sell 2 of those as Ryzen 6, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 5. And then now I imagine, like, hey, we have dies where 2 of the cores are failed. Let's sell them as Ryzen 3, right? So you have two parts connected with a fabric. So
Yep, that's what I would guess too. I believe they've said that's their intention, but again, I'm not 100% certain on that. And it's worth noting that there are some quad-core chips in the Ryzen 5 lineup.
Oh, really?
But they have simultaneous multi-threading. I almost said hyper-threading again. But they have SMT enabled. So, and the cheapest one is the Ryzen 5 1400, which is $170. So you could expect these to be quite a bit under that. Do you have any pricing predictions, do you think?
Oh, we're going to do that again.
We don't have to. I'm just
Brad
asking.
wants to win all the things.
Okay.
What do we think it's going to be?
Whoa.
Well-
I won. Let's just say I won for Ryzen, which was the big one because no one knew
Ryzen
what
7?
to expect. Ryzen 7.
Well, there's a key piece of information we haven't mentioned yet, I think, right? Which
What?
is these come with no integrated graphics.
Oh, right. That is
That is
actually a
key.
really big.
So I feel like that really is going to play into the pricing because Core i3, you do get IGP.
Right.
Yep.
So I'm actually kind of fascinated by the fact that it doesn't have this because, as Gordon and I were saying earlier before the show, this really makes these gaming chips, or at least it forces you to have to buy an external graphics or a separate graphics card.
Right.
So that already automatically drives up your price.
Huh.
So I'm kind of wondering how they're going to position this and who they're going to market it to.
Yeah. How much of a deal breaker is that for you with no IGP?
It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it makes it more difficult.
definitely makes sort of like super budget builds tough because IGP. Yeah, it's better than nothing. It's really not, and it's come a long way, especially in Kaby Lake. It ain't bad. So what?
I mean, it's really decent now.
Man.
So, I mean, what is it? The lowest Ryzen 5 part you said was 179, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So a
170. 170.
169 is a list for the Ryzen 5 1400.
1300X, I mean, I'm guessing they're going to put it at the very low end of 100. But then if you have to get a cheap graphics card, that's going to drive it up to what, 120, 130 at least? So I don't know if this is going to really hit us hard against Core i3 as I was hoping it would.
Oh, this is why you were saying it wouldn't be that mainstream because unfortunately most of mainstream America runs IGP. This is an American
Vast majority.
Right.
This is an American phenomenon for people who don't know. Americans don't buy discrete graphics. They just don't. Europeans, Asia sell lots of, you guys, NVIDIA and AMD, they sell a lot more GPUs in Europe and Asia than they do in the US. The average American buying an all-in-one POS box, they don't care about the graphics. So
Just got to run those cat videos on YouTube.
yeah.
That's it.
All right, so we're into that. All right, so let's get into the pricing game. So look, one bottom, the lowest end Ryzen 5 again, Ryzen 5 1400 with the cooler, 169. And then the next CPU available from AMD is the old FX 6300. It's a 6-core part, $81. So they
Well, you can still get like the 8350 and stuff.
You can still get the A350. That's like about 130 if it's not on sale. But goodness, I hope you're not buying it when it's like at full price. I hope you're buying it on sale.
Who the hell is buying 8350s today? 8370.
I mean, sometimes you can get a deal where it's like it's down to like 80 something, and sometimes they'll even throw in a motherboard.
That's the kind of thing he's like, hey, you send somebody to the store, pick up a 8-core AMD part for me. Here's $150, and they come back with an 8370 part for 146. It's like, no. Yeah, I wanted a Ryzen. Yeah, you're right, actually. So yeah, the next one, 146. So 8370 is 146. FX 8370, 146. And then we have a 8350, FX 8350 for 135. I think what happens, I really think Ryzen 3, you're going to push in between 170. I think it's Ryzen 3 will be $100. I think it's the Core i5 7600K killer. I think it'll be $110. And then the crazy thing is all these other FX parts that'll still be around will get even cheaper. So
7600K killer, huh?
Them
Yeah.
strong words,
That's a
Gordon.
line just to casually toss out there.
no, and I will say, for the purpose of gaming, yeah, 7600K is a great part. You will get, I don't care what any fanboys say, you will get, higher frame rates out of a 7600K part in most things. But I gotta say, at $230 for a 7600K, and I'm looking at possibly $110 Core Ryzen, Ryzen 3 part, I'm like, I will take that Ryzen 3, $100. That gets me into a bigger GPU, right?
It does, especially if you're not planning to overclock. So
Yeah, but I mean, I'm going to get a bigger GPU out of it, which is going to get me way more than I'm going to get out of a 7600K because I can't afford the same amount of GPU.
I just don't know if that's a fair comparison. I feel like anyone who's looking at an overclockable part is already in a different headspace.
Well, but we don't live. I sort of like in my book, I just sort of like and maybe this is the way Intel sees it too. I sort of think all gamers looking for a quad core part, you just buy that K part. You may not even ever overclock it, but most people just go for that K part because it's just easy.
I think a lot of people who buy budget tend to overclock too because they're trying to get the most that they can out of what they can afford.
Right. You can get very good overclocks out of a K part, right? So, I mean, these are high clock parts. They're great chips. But I got to say, for gaming purposes, you're looking at if you could get the next step up GPU. If I'm looking at a 1070 with a Ryzen 3 versus a 1060 with a 7600K part, of course, that's not all the way to a 1070 part, but
Sure.
it certainly gets you a lot closer, right?
Sure, but aren't you giving up some of that overclocking ability? Because Ryzen doesn't overclock as well.
We don't know. We don't know how these Ryzen 3 parts
That's
are
true.
going to overclock.
I'm just saying based on what we've seen.
It hasn't overclocked as well as Kaby Lake, but for the most part in gaming, I would take the faster GPU almost, 9 times out of 10. So, no?
Yeah, what happens to those FX parts?
I think they just
Ryzen
get
3
pushed
comes
down
out.
lower and lower. I mean, they will get pushed down into fighting with, Celeron and Pentium parts. which-
Basically, just everything must go.
Where?
Yeah.
Yeah, they said at least when Ryzen first launched, weren't planning on killing the FX line. So I wouldn't be surprised if they wind up being the Celeron competitors.
Yeah. I mean, and the crazy thing is they actually have Celeron. They still sell Athlon X4. I'm going to guess those will get pushed into, developing markets, and FX will probably get pushed into fighting with the Celeron Pentium. But, they have the same problem there, too, is there's a lack of IGP on FX. So I think there might be some, I don't know if they even have chipsets with graphics anymore, but so it is a pricey
APUs.
build. Yeah, I mean, I think, that's the next shoe, right? AMD's like Imelda Marcos with the shoes. There's going to be an APU coming out within 3 months. And that really is the part that's going to compete with a lot of the i3 parts, because you're going to have an APU that arguably could be more powerful, and you're going to get 4 cores. So,
And it has the integrated graphics
Yeah.
for all of us Americans who are too lazy.
yeah, but I mean,
Deal with discrete
it's going to be, that's the part that's going to go into the lower end, parts, the entry level parts, and it's going to probably be fairly decent. And, the next shoe after that is laptops. As much as desktop people love to talk about desktops, laptops that's where all the action is. You're looking at,
That's also this quarter.
yeah, man. If AMD can really get laptop CPU accepted by a lot of OEMs into higher end builds, like this beautiful HP here, not Apple, by the way, they're really going to rock Intel's world with laptops. So servers and laptops. I don't know. It's going to be a rough couple years for Intel. It feels like I don't know. I should stop talking. Somebody else should say something.
Do we have any questions, or is it just crickets in the?
No questions. But man, there's a lot of chatter. There's people talking about the lack of IGP. People are giving their own predictions on price. It seems like 130 is what people are predicting.
Oh wait, I'm the only one who put my money in. Everybody else ante up. Everybody else ante up.
What do you mean?
What'd you say for price?
Well, I actually didn't give a specific number. I said low 100. So let's say 110.
I guess 110. You can't guess that already.
Fine, 105.
Price is right.
I think
rules.
$100 for the Ryzen 3 1200 and 120 to 125 for the higher end one.
Oh, I should specify which chip is which.
All right, so I'm gonna say, 1300X for 110, 99 for 1200.
Man.
Yeah.
that's
And who's
awfully
saying
aggressive,
16
man.
core part for $1,000? Like, you're high. We're crazy.
If this is Price is Right rules and I can't actually duplicate somebody else, I guess I'm going with 115 and 105. Just for kicks.
All right. So
My
5%.
thoughts are in the Ryzen Pro lineup, they compared the 1300X versus the Core i3 7100. And the Core i3, it beats the 7100, but it's $117, $119 at Newegg and Amazon and stuff. So I would think the 1300X will be just a little bit above that, even without IGP.
All right, actually, I will vacate 110. All right, you can have 110. I'm going to scale it back. 1300X for $99. I'm lowering that.
I gotta admit, I'm too scared to actually go that low because I think, oh my God, Gordon, that's
12
$1,200.
Ryzen 3 $1,279. What's it going to take to get you into this CPU today? Don't walk off the lot. Sign on the line.
The thing is,
brand new. I'll throw in
what
the
you're saying is
formats.
kind of crazy, but I can see the logic behind your crazy because given their philosophy with just how much they're slashing and burning with Threadripper, they could take that same approach with Ryzen 3.
Right. They want to just be as disruptive as possible, and disruptive not
$79.
$79 for Ryzen 3 1200 4 cores 4 threads 3.1 base 3.4 turbo unlocked.
Dang.
I could get more behind that if the cheapest Ryzen 5 wasn't $170. Like, that's a $70 gap.
It is.
Family to family.
But it seems like they are revising their playbook constantly. So who knows, right?
Well, actually, I kind of thought about this. It almost kind of made sense. You got the 8-core coming in at 500. Then the 16 came in at 1,000, right? I mean, that's just double the cores, double the price, right? So could we apply that logic now to the 3?
No, because
No?
if you just have to be 250,
Well, it's 1/4 of the thread count of a Ryzen 7.
So it's 125.
Which is the number I said.
Yeah.
But wait, Ryzen
how
7.
tidy.
Ryzen 7 is what, 330, and you're looking at 1/4 of the core count.
You know what's crazy?
thread
You
count?
can actually buy it now for $270. I was looking it up today.
Yeah, they've been starting to do sales, the
Nice.
retailers.
So what's 25% of that?
Man,
Why you gotta
you
make us do
you
math?
can't ask math questions like that on the fly.
$79.
Actually, I think Noah could answer this.
$79. Wait, Adam is not guessed. Adam, put in. You need to ante
yeah.
up. You need to ante up, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Wait, but somebody already took 125, right?
That
Brad.
would be Brad.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I was gonna go with that logic. So my money is that Brad is gonna be on the nose. That's where I'm putting my money.
So you want that same? Not willing to.
Yeah, I'm doubling down on Brad.
And you're 110 and 105.
No, I'm going with 115, 105.
No, this is going to be $79.
I don't think there's going to be a $10 difference.
$79.
But I'm just picking
We'll
random
give you
numbers.
the cooler too.
Fine.
LEDs on it.
115.95 there.
Gordon's going to be right because so far it's always been the lowest pick that's been right.
I know.
It's true. It's true.
AMD is watching right now. They're like, oh, well, if Gordon says it, I guess we'll just
Yeah,
do
that's it. Oh, hey, yeah, that's how they do the. Oh, yeah, hey, Lisa wants to meet with you tomorrow morning. Have you done your market research? Oh, man, I was out drinking last night. What did they say in the Full Nerd? I'll use that. $79. Well, this seems kind of low.
Hey, you know what? You Gordon, though, you do have some people in the chat that are backing you up on it. So
I gotta say, it's like
Can you imagine, though, if that actually happened? Holy moly.
And the thing that's crazy too is I was just looking at the Intel price list, and Intel they are just like, we ain't moving. I mean, the 10-core part came down $700, but that original 10-core part was just like playing around, like we don't even care. But their price is $2,000 for the 18-core part. Is it 2,000 or 1,800? I forget.
No, it's 2,000 for the top part.
2,000,
They
yep.
are just like, we ain't moving. We're just not. No.
We like money.
Just, we are not moving here. And I just, between Threadripper pricing and the Ryzen 3, whew. Man, that's just too exciting. All right,
yeah, it'll be fun.
So we'll find out, hopefully, and we'll let you know here. We don't know this information. We have not been briefed on any of the pricing. We're just guessing here, pulling stuff
It
out.
is launching in 9 days.
In 9
we'll know
days,
soon.
right?
We'll
So-
find out soon enough.
Hopefully we'll know the price. But yeah, I think it's going to be disruptive. And AMD is just like,
On the CPU side, super exciting.
All about messing Intel up.
On the next topic, maybe not quite as exciting.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Lena's got the segues
I
today.
got
I'm
it.
gonna give the segue prize
Man.
today. So the next, we're going to Kerchunk over the next one. Kerchunk, Vega FE Performance. And of course, there really is like, where's Waldo, man? Where's
Don't make a
Brad again has, of course, been doing his job and keeping up with what is going on. I have not. I mean, I have actually touched FE. Probably the only person in this room that touched it, but I haven't really followed anything else because of all the vacation. But
I touched it too, Gordon.
yeah, you did touch it, right? You did touch it.
Whoa, now. Family show.
Yes.
I watched the
show.
awesome videos on PCWorld.com.
Yes. That was interesting. But we did not actually get to review the part. I guess some people have reviewed Ryzen, or gosh.
Some people
stuck in
bought
Ryzen.
it to review
Vega
it.
and FE. Wow.
Yeah, PC Perspective and Gamers Nexus, which are two very highly respected and rightfully so enthusiast sites. They actually both bought the Ryzen Vega Frontier Edition Air-Cooled, which is $1,000. It's not an RX Vega card, so it's not made for gaming. Or not marketed for gaming. It's for Imagineers or whatever they were saying.
Like a Mouseketeer, but you're imagining stuff.
Well, they actually use that term. Disney uses that for their
They
engineers.
use something like that. That's what I have in my head.
It is.
So.
Yeah.
Wait. Pause. Wait. Where does Disney have engineers?
Imagineers. That's what they used to call the people who would like
The
build the
artists.
animatronics. When they're for the original park.
Noah is confirming this.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
like you, Noah.
I did not know that, so that's a new one on me. But go ahead. All right. Sorry.
So yeah, Gamers Nexus and PC Perspective tested these cards, the air-cooled Frontier Edition, which again costs $1,000, and it looks like they don't have the final like gaming drivers out yet. So you should take all their results as a worst-case scenario, like the bare minimum kind of a deal. And I highly recommend going and checking out both sides' articles. But sum it up, the air-cooled version in games, it draws about 350 watts of power. And it performs somewhere between a GTX 1070 and a GTX 1080.
In gaming.
So in gaming. So for people looking ahead to what RX Vega is going to expect, you can expect that as like a bare minimum. That's on air. So it uses 300 to 350 watts of power to land between GTX 1070 and 1080, whereas a GTX 1080 uses 180 watts. Matt TDP. So there's quite a difference in power efficiency there.
It's basically Fury X all over again, is what people are kind of speculating.
Yeah, it looks an awful lot like it, even as base construction, actually. Like, it has the same number of shaders. It has the same, all the underlying stuff is the same numbers. But something that's really interesting, PC Perspective also bought the liquid-cooled version. And their review of that just went up yesterday. And even though both the liquid-cooled version and the air-cooled version are rated the same, it performs much, much better under liquid cooling. Because under the air cooling, the card would throttle, and it would only go up to 1440 megahertz in typical power in typical gaming situations. Whereas under liquid cooling, it would go all the way up to its max 1600 megahertz. Usage, so it was able to hit higher frame rates, and it actually pulled a little bit ahead of the GTX 1080 in PC Perspective tests. And that's, again, not using final gaming drivers. There's a question whether or not it's using the DrawStream binning rasterizer yet. We're not sure that's in there. So that's pretty intriguing data for what we can expect out of the RX Vega when it launches the end of this month, actually, just a couple of weeks.
Not too far off.
And I guess Jacob in YouTube saying that Gamer Nexus did some undervolting testing. Have you looked in on that?
Yeah, and that's really intriguing, actually. They did some undervolting testing, and they were able to undervolt it and get better performance, just like you could with the Fury X, so save some power efficiency that way. So That also just came out yesterday. Both those sites, go check them out. PC Perspective and Gamers Nexus. They both bought those, and they're doing some great work on them.
Yeah, good. I mean, it's both super smart guys. Ryan, although I understand Ryan is actually standing in line at Newegg right now to return the card he bought. I'm just kidding. Ryan would never do something like that. I just like review this. I didn't like it. It runs too hot, uses too much power. Reason for return. Yes, but
Speaking of,
So yeah,
too
they're
much
actually
power-
AMD's actually showing off RX Vega today in Budapest.
Oh.
Before the official launch at SIGGRAPH at the end of the month, they're going to 3 different places to show off the card and let people actually play with RX Vega before it's announced. So
So Brad, speaking of too much power, the overclocking, that was kind of crazy, right? Because PC Per did
Yes.
the overclocking, and the power draw is kind of insane. Didn't it
Yeah,
go up
so-
almost 100 watts or something?
yeah, so this was off the top of my head. I had the liquid cooled version because I was just reading that yesterday. And there's a BIOS switch that you can toggle, and it'll draw either 300 watts or 350 watts. They obviously tested with the 350 watt one because you might as well get as much performance as possible. But they also overclocked the card, and it drove power consumption all the way up to 440 watts. So that's,
Okay.
you're-
I did remember that
typically
correctly.
these days, when people ask me for what do I need for a power supply in a PC, I say if you're just sticking to a modern CPU and a modern GPU, you could probably get by with 650 watts. You might not be able to with RX Vega.
Might not be able
What about that?
Especially if you put it in a Skylake X PC.
Or what if you use
Yes.
Gordon's, built-in, or the one that comes with the case? You think that'll be good?
which one?
Your power supply that comes with the case.
Oh,
your budget saving method.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
not going to happen. But I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I'd be awesome. That's like, to me, that's like the awesome build. Is like a Crossfire.
awesome for the power company because they're going to be able to just
Cross-
milk you for money.
A Crossfire Founders Edition in an overclocked 7900X. I miss the days of 1600 watt power supplies not being enough.
It's a good thing they're gone because one of the side effects of mining, actually, you know how all the GPUs, like you can't buy them right now. Even
Yeah.
the GTX 1080 is starting to go up in price.
Oh, jeez.
1,000 watt plus power supplies are ridiculously expensive these days.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, because they need those high end juice to power all that stuff.
Wow.
I didn't think about that. That's
Man,
On the plus side, it sounds like RX Vega will not be appealing to miners.
you would legitimately need a 1600 watt power supply. It sounds like if you're going to run an overclocked FE with a 7900X, you would need a high amperage 1600 watt PSU, right? I mean, and I think that was the most that ever was sold to the public, because
Yeah.
you're sort of
Yes.
at the limit of 20 amps at the walls. so,
Jeez.
man, those people mining, they're going to be bringing that stuff to the office.
I gotta say though, is this like looking really bad? Because I mean, that's Fury X. You couldn't get the damn things, and it ran hot as
mean-
hell. Is this a repeat of that all over again?
I've always said, as well as many other people, that there's no bad graphics cards. There's just bad graphics card prices. So if they price this right, I mean, they could still sell some. The question is, how cheaply are they going to be able to sell these for? Because they have the big die, they have HBM2. To get the peak performance, they're going to need a high-end cooler or liquid cooler out of it. So we'll know more soon. It launches the 30th or 31st, I think. I forget when SIGGRAPH starts, but if the RX Vega performance aligns roughly to the Frontier Edition, I would guess it to fall somewhere between the 1080 and 1080 Ti with optimized drivers and whatnot. So it's going to depend on pricing. And who's still around buying, graphics cards in that price range at this point? People who have FreeSync monitors, people who are lagging behind. I don't know if this will necessarily drive people to upgrade from their GTX 1080 to a Vega. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because those have been out for a year. So.
How you alluded to this a little bit in the video that we did when they stopped by, but how come their AMD is able to be so pushing the boundaries on CPUs, but GPUs they're just not getting there?
Well, I think it's very similar. I think the CPU turnaround started, earlier And I think the GPU turnaround started after the CPU turnaround. I mean, that's probably Raja didn't take over. They didn't even have RTG till I think well after, Ryzen was probably already in the works. So that would be my guess. And, AMD has been a traditionally underfunded company. Their stock had been in the dumps for a long, long time. It's doing great now for AMD. So I think it's tough. You're competing against Intel and Nvidia, So and competing Nvidia, and they play hardball, and they have not made a bad product in a long time. I can't remember the last really bad Nvidia product. I mean, I do remember it. 4 Series cards.
Yeah, the 480.
But that was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. So
they have not been complacent.
So there's no way
they were able to catch up to Intel because Intel's kind of been resting, but Nvidia has not been resting.
Right.
So there's no way you think they can be disruptive like they have on the CPU side with Vega.
Oh,
I mean, like saying
it depends.
No way
It all depends on final performance and price point.
I would say going back to that point, could you also, to Adam's question that is, could you also just say that it's just a very different approach on both sides? I mean, like CPUs, they're basically taking the existing playbook and just catching up and doing it slightly better. Whereas I feel like on the GPU side, they're trying to push some technology that's new, which is a lot harder. I mean, HBM2, like, aren't they having yield problems? I thought I read that somewhere, that it could be a yield problem. So that's an issue. They're going to have to get that up and running in a way that, NVIDIA doesn't have to deal with because they're using stuff that they already know and can just refine. Yeah. So I feel like that's two entirely different games that they have to play on each side.
Well, and then also, the thing I got to say is Intel is a lot larger. I mean, they're huge, right? They're the number one chip company in the world. They don't turn on a dime. NVIDIA, despite it being a pretty good-sized company these days, they seem to turn like a Ferrari, right? They're like, because I swear to God, they're like, okay, we got it, RX Vega's ready, we're going to do it for, $550. And then like 3 hours before, NVIDIA will come out and say, 1080 Ti, $300 now. Right? Intel is like, they're like, whoa, we got to should we cut Xeon? I think should we sell these things for $2,000? Let's have some more meetings about this. I'll see you in conference room 578 in R&B in 4 hours. Well, okay, NVIDIA's like, just do it, and they've done this so many times where NVIDIA will come out like, we're not going to cede any ground to you. We don't care if we're still better and we're faster. We're just gonna come up and sucker punch you anyway, just because we want to do it, right? And they've done this every time. Look
at last year with the Fury X. I find it awfully coincidental that launched at, I think it was $650, $700, the GTX 1080, like a week or two before the Fury X came out, with just enough performance shaved off to be just a little bit faster than the Fury X.
It's actually funny now that you put it that way, that both companies are taking different approaches. Intel just pretends that AMD doesn't exist, and it's like, I'm just gonna stick with what we got, and then Nvidia on the other side is just like, every chance they get, they just sucker
like,
punch.
We're better than you, and we just want to remind you of that.
Yeah.
The thing is, they haven't been. Another difference is that AMD's been so far behind Intel for so long. Being realistic, since they've been big on Bulldozer and the multi-core didn't work out. But on the graphics card front, they've actually been really competitive with Nvidia forever. Like even the Fury X, the GTX 1080 or 1090 was a better buy, but the Fury X compared pretty well against that, and all the 300 series cards did all right against the 900 series cards. So they've been a lot more actually competitive over time on the graphics front, I think, than
I'm not disagreeing with that. I was just saying that in Adam's scenario, I think NVIDIA's mindset is, we're better than you. We're just going to keep reminding you of that. I don't think that's actually what is, happening.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of waiting for the day where AMD does a live stream on YouTube to announce this new graphics card, the new, Vega 2, right? Or what, Navi or whatever. And then right as they announce it, the actual stream will be preempted by Jensen announcing a part that's twice as fast for half the price or something. Just just to mess with them. They just do this all the time. And it's just the hyper competitive publicly. I don't know.
It works out great for the consumers.
Yeah.
So
it is good. I mean, competition is great.
Unless you're an early adopter, then it's a little sadder if you actually care about price.
have to revisit this after the consumer versions come out. I'm really curious to see whether or not the SIGGRAPH announcement, like, hey, we'll launch this at SIGGRAPH at the end of July. I'm really curious to see if that's a hard launch with like reviews and you can go buy it, or if it's once more, hey, here's everything about it. You can buy it in 2 weeks and just punt it a little bit farther down. I'm not 100% sure what it's going to be yet.
But I do also, so some of this, when you launch a product, I've been covering this long enough. It's managing expectations. So Vega has been a long build up, right? For a year, people have had very high expectations, and we're definitely into the backlash phase now, where people are just angry. They just want to see the damn thing. They just want to buy the damn thing.
Made them wait too long.
So you make them wait too long. But as much as we sort of in the media, we see that as bad because now everybody's grumbling. Everybody's on YouTube and Facebook, and they're all angry. Like 3 months they're saying great things about Vega. You can take advantage of that because it helps reset expectations. Because if they can't be 1080 Ti, but they come in at a really reasonable price, then it's suddenly a win again.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which was kind of their approach with Polaris.
Yeah.
The
580 parts,
the
or
480.
the 480. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if they can. I mean, for all we know, definitely the gaming performance of FE. Of course, it's not a gaming part, but could they also be sandbagging too? I mean, once you get final drivers and.
Yeah, well, I think there will definitely be gains on that front, but it's good to view this as the bare minimum. Like I said, you could expect more. I wouldn't expect less out of this, out of the flagship part at least.
Okay, so then let's because we love doing this game.
How much paper am I going to have to eat this year?
We didn't write these
Gordon?
down. We have not eaten this paper yet. Oh wait, I should have written it down so I could eat my Threadripper pricing. Let's say Vega RX Vega RXV will be somewhere between 1080 Ti 1080. Air cooled, not water cooled. It's got to be air cooled. You can't have a mainstream. I don't know.
I bet they have both.
They'll have both. But let's say like the air cooled part. What will the air cooled part cost for RX Vega for between 1080, 1080? Let's say right at the midpoint. What are you going to say? Oh, and actually, what's the current 1080 Ti 1080 pricing on the street?
I'm looking that up right now.
Oh, okay.
I think it's like 500 for 1080.
Well, theoretically.
These are like the list prices, not the street price, like actual because
Have
of mining.
miners mess that up too?
Yeah, he was just sorry. Brad was just saying that.
Do you have to factor that? Do they have to factor that into their pricing for the parts?
I think it lets them price a little bit higher. I think if they can match the 1080 but actually be available because the power efficiency isn't there, which is what miners are looking for, then they could actually sell them.
Oh,
The power. In fact, like a month ago, they're like, "My God, we need to sell these parts and we need to sell a part to gamers and make it not attractive to miners. What can you do? We could just make the core run at 100% all the time, sir. But that would make it run at 350 watts. Just do it." And then in 5 months, when all the mining craze is over, then we found an optimization to crank it down to 180 watts. I could do conspiracy theories all day.
I know you can.
I have no idea what this is going to cost.
All right, so I can't. In theory, 500 for 1080, 650 for 1080 Ti. In theory, right? List street. If you can get
list price.
All right, so I'm going to say 500 RX Vega. The reason why is because they're going to anticipate NVIDIA coming and try to mess them up. So NVIDIA will probably cut 1080 Ti to 600. RX Vega will be 500. 1080 will be 400. 1070 moves down even lower.
The part that kills me is the expensive components, because I know what I think they should price them at, but I don't know if they'd be able to price it there.
Yeah.
So you think it'll be
In an
8 gigs,
ideal
right?
world, I would think a liquid-cooled Vega flagship card would be $550. I would think an air-cooled Vega card would be $450, with room between that for vendor add-in board partners, $450 and $550. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And if they have the cut-down 56 CU version, somewhere between $300 and $350 for that, because the 1070 is $380.
$450, really, Brad? That's pretty steep.
Steep
Like,
or
and
like
in
cheap?
terms of like going down the price range. Because I was going to actually say 550 and 500, just because I'm not sure what what HBM2 is really costing them.
$550 for the water cooled one.
Water cooled, yeah, and then air cooled would be 500.
That's pretty close.
These are. I want to say this again. That it totally depends. We don't know what the final RX Vega performance
Of course.
is. 'Cause we can't judge it just off this.
We're
I just feel
just
like I should say that
doing
again.
pricing for the sake of pricing because we've done that for everything else so far on the show.
Why not? Why stop?
I suspect people watching realize that these guys don't know what they're talking about. Their pricing, they're so off. But yeah, I still think 5 and 6 water cooled just because it's expensive for the cooler. 600 for that, 500, and these are 8 gig HBM 2 parts. I don't think, right? 'Cause they can't go 16 gigs at that price. It just seems it's got to be 8 gig and 8 gig stack. Of course, that kind of hurts bandwidth too. But
What's the pricing for the other cards or the RX cards?
580 is, well,
It tops out at 250
in theory.
theory.
gigabyte.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
in theory.
Yep.
You want to weigh in here, Adam? Put
You know,
some money
I'm trying to put.
in,
I'm
like,
just trying to put some.
get in the
Do
poker
his math
game.
again.
Yeah.
Or are you just
yeah.
going to ride along with Brad again?
You know, I was actually going to say 450, but then I was thinking, okay, you know, the performance of the 580 for 250. You know, could you say, hey, Vega at twice the price? You know, that's a harder sell. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna go with Brad, 450. Sorry, I'm copping out.
Yeah, you must be really fun in Vegas, Adam. Like,
He's doing all the math.
sir, my chips are on that number. No, I want that one too. That's not how roulette is played. You see, I put my chips on this number. I win. You can't also stack your chips on my chips. That's not how it works, sir.
No, I actually do. This one's hard because I think it's different with the HBM2 stuff because you know it's like without that I think they would try to even further undercut at 400 or something. But yeah, I mean like if they got to worry about
HBM2
cost,
is expensive combo.
yeah,
It's going to be hard to get. Although I think I sent you a news release I got from Samsung. They're saying, hey, our 8 gig HBM stack is shipping now or something. I forget. I didn't read through it all, but
Ramping up.
but not, of course that doesn't affect you for a part that's already that's hopefully being built in a factory right now. So, so wait, 450.
550 for water cooled, 450 for not water cooled.
Okay, and I'm saying 500 air, 8 gig HBM2, 600 water, and Elena is.
I am apparently vastly underpricing what it costs for liquid cooling, but I will still stick with what I said, which is 550 and 500.
And Adam's stacking his chips on Brad. So
yes.
So we hopefully we'll find out very soon, and
Yeah. What is
30th,
that?
you said?
12 days. 12
Yeah.
days, a little under 2 weeks.
and we'll come back here and discuss. And we do have to have the day of reckoning for eating the paper.
Yeah.
God, my stomach.
We all put guesses down, but I genuinely have no idea what they're going to price this at. Like, this is the first, like, before I always go like, oh, I got a good gut feeling about this. I think it's going to be here. Even with Ryzen, where I ended up being a couple $100 off, you know, I felt comfortable saying, you know, I think it'll be $700. But here, I genuinely have no idea.
Yeah. That seems hyper aggressive though. 450 to me, that's pretty aggressive. Even though it's only $50, but that seems.
Well,
aggressive.
I mean, the GTX 1080 is $500 and it's been out for a year and it uses half the power.
Yeah, but if they're a little more than that, you know,
Yeah.
all brand new
Yeah.
fangled stuff. Plus, you know, it's new. It seems like it. And also, HBM2 does also limit the availability of them, so pricing it higher
Yep.
keeps the demand down a little bit. So.
I'd be annoyed if I bought the Frontier Edition right now because that card's $1,000 to what, $1,500, and they don't even have the final drivers yet. They're like they get the beta version and get to pay 2 or 3 times as much for it.
Yeah, but you know, it's not a gaming card. It's not a gaming card. That's sort of their whole play with that is. But yeah, I hear you. But it is a pretty card, so maybe that's like it's almost worth it. Collector's edition cards.
And actually, PC Per did a bunch of like spec view perf and stuff like that test too. You can check out their thing, and it actually holds up pretty well. Trades punches with Titan XP. So
yeah, so that's but people want to know how it's going to perform. But it'd be interesting to see if AMD sandbagged all the drivers for that, just so that people wouldn't be able to tell what RX is going to be. And they come out and punch. Like, what if this thing is like 90% of a 1080 Ti part? Then it's a success, right?
We can only hope.
Yeah, okay.
I'm very curious times.
Yes.
We're gonna be it's gonna be a very different world in August.
This summer is not. You know what? Usually summer is when everybody takes their breaks. PC industry is not taking
No.
their
This summer's heating up. Sorry.
breaks. In a world where. All right, I think that's it for our topics. We are going to go to viewer Q&A.
Yeah.
If we have any, or people are just shouting at each other
Yeah.
at this point.
Or
Yeah.
just shouting at us for our
Shouting at
pricing.
us.
We got a couple of
predictions.
email questions too.
Yeah.
Oh, right, and I got to go. Let me go through
From the
questions.
email.
And yes, there's something wrong with my Outlook. It defaults to this gigantic piece of paper. For people watching, I'm not trying to kill the earth here. Something wrong with my Outlook setup. And I wasn't going to print it again, which doesn't save the paper. So for people listening, I am looking at an email with 5 words on it on an 11 by 17 piece of paper. Okay, first question is from Dr. LeCount, also the creator of Count Chocula. No, I'm sorry, just kidding. Michael LeCount says, first, love the show. Keep it up. Thanks. My question, I am looking to build a new gaming rig in the next year or so and wanted to know what would be the minimum GPU, both Team NVIDIA and AMD, for a 2-monitor setup with one monitor doing 1080p Ultra at 60 frames a second for any current gaming title, and the second doing 720p video playback, monitor resolution 1080p. So it sounds like video running on a second panel at 720p and playing at 1080p Ultra, 60 frames a second.
So realistically, to hit that 1080p 60 frames a second gaming, you're going to need a RX 580 or a GTX 1060 6 gigabyte, not 3 gigabyte. And either one of those cards should be able to do that just fine. That or better. So you shouldn't have too much issue. An issue I've had actually in trying to do that is more CPU related, because like if you're looking at YouTube and it defaults to Flash, then that can actually hammer your CPU really hard. So if you're playing a CPU intensive game, that could be an issue. So that's just something to consider there.
Can't you? Isn't there HTML5 though for YouTube at this point? Or
Yeah, you can switch it over, but I don't know if it's the default or not. But there are situations where I think the CPU would play a bigger factor into that than the GPU would.
So no Atom on this.
Huh? What?
No Atom CPU or
No.
no Celeron dual core. No hyperthreading. Okay. Good answer. Good answer. Second question from I'm not going to mess this name up. Michael Osterhot. Greetings, everyone. I love the podcast. Enjoy the days when new episodes get posted as if they were holidays. Hey, great. We do too, because we just about post them about every holiday these days. Keep the format in depth. Michael wants to know, can you please expand on the subject of Intel's seeming abandonment of their EDRAM enhanced Iris Pro graphics in the higher end SKUs on newer CPU generations? And then also please shed some light on the reasons for their changing direction. Example, Broadwell models that came with 128 megabytes of L4 EDRAM cache seem to dominate gaming performance. In some cases, because of this feature. On the notebook side, the promise of modern GPU performance versus lower power dedicated GPUs from a single package in the 4 to 5 watt TDP space had many of us counting on their appearance segment, establishing models like MacBook Pro and the XPS 15. And there gets into some technical questions about the problem is, dealing with the cache size 14, 15. But it sounds like this is aimed at me, kind of. I got to say, although, do you want to talk about the performance of Iris Pro, or I can just get into the...
I mean, what we've seen most recently was last year on the Skull Canyon Nook.
Yeah.
So
That was nice, and that was
pretty good. I mean, for integrated graphics, I think I was able to get... Okay, guys, I'm just going to say it. I know this
Console
is not
quality.
Console quality, 30 frames per second. But you could
it's
actually...
all the
play-
human eye can see anyway, don't you know?
So you could actually do that in some AAA games. I mean, I was playing GTA 5 at 30, but I mean, lowest settings. But doing that on integrated was kind of a novelty.
Yeah, it's... it's. I gotta say, really, those. I still call them Crystal Well because originally when they came out with the EDRAM versions for Haswell, they were codenamed Crystal Well, so I still call them that. I think it was. So I think
But yeah, I mean, to his point though, I haven't really heard or seen much since last year about that push. Like, it's almost like they just kind of dropped it.
Right. So, the part he's specifically referencing is the Core i7-5775C. We reviewed it a couple of years ago. And then, of course, 2 weeks later, Skylake came out and stomped it. Nobody cared about Broadwell after that. There were 2 chips made. They had the 128 megabytes of L4 in the package. And a lot of the benchmarks I've seen still say like, hey, these things do really awesome in gaming benchmarks because of the EDRAM. But I don't honestly think you're probably going to see it again in a socket. I think going all the way back to the ancient history of this, Intel never actually expected to make these crystal well parts in a discrete part that you could put in a socket. If I remember history right, what happened was people saw roadmaps where Intel only had no more sockets. Remember the no more sockets freak out? At one point, everybody thought Intel was going to eliminate sockets. Like you would just buy your motherboard, it would have an Intel CPU in it. I've talked to vendors who were convinced that was absolutely going to happen. That was the truth. I've also talked to Intel who have told me no, that was never the case. We always intended to make basically, socketed CPUs, but that would be later, at a slower cadence. I think they were forced into making Broadwell in that socket that in the Z170 boards for Haswell, and they're never going to do it again because there's just really no real appeal for it. It's going to come out in BGA versions probably later on eventually once they care to go into iMacs, to go into all-in-ones so they can get a little more performance. So it will happen, but BGA, I think you're never going to see a EDRAM version in a socket again. So, which of course really hurts you because you're not going to really want to run only integrated graphics, even though it is fairly decent for what it is. You're not going to want to skip a Radeon RX Vega for integrated graphics. So,
but those are really good integrated graphics. He has a point, and Elaine has a point. Those were really, really good. I can understand why he'd want to see more of that.
I mean, hopefully we still see it in, as you said, those integrated systems where like a laptop or something where you don't have to really take that huge like power consumption hit with discrete graphics.
Right.
But it's so quiet on that front. I really, even like this generation of Kaby Lake, I haven't really seen anything like that.
Yeah, and I think one of the theories that he kind of alludes to, which I think Brian over at PC Per, by the way, one of the smart guys in the room, was that, I think it was Ryan. Basically, it's a problem. Well, I think I'm miscrediting that. That actually goes to Tech Report, but basically they were saying that it's a problem because the cache is different size and the dies, and it's a problem doing this. But I really think most of it's marketing and engineering resources that Intel frankly stopped kind of caring about desktops 2 years ago. So I don't think it was on the roadmap. Does it make sense to put that into the new 2066 socket? No, because there's no way to get IGP out of it. Although it'd be kind of cool to have a Kaby Lake X part with that great big cache on it just to help with discrete performance. But, Intel doesn't generally think that way. But that would be kind of cool thinking out of the box, disruptive behavior, right? Because, like Kaby Lake X, people are like, what, this is a waste of time. What if they come out with 124, 28 meg EDRAM caching? They're like, hey, we're doing this. This is not for graphics. This is so you get better gaming performance. And be like, oh, this is different. So
it would make it a little bit more palatable to pay for a $300 motherboard in that case.
Yeah, then you go like, well, because I'm getting Kaby Lake X with this big fat cache. It's like, God, that actually would.
Right.
Then people were like, okay, I get it. Whereas like people are like, huh? I don't get it. What? So
maybe that's coming and they just haven't told us.
Yeah, and they haven't told us. And I will say I asked Intel for comment because I hadn't even thought about this in a long time and I have not received word. So clearly it's still rattling around somewhere in Intel. But, clearly you can imagine there's probably a lot of midnight oil being burned at Intel these days with all the competition they have. So
speaking of which, I'm curious to see what Ryzen APUs wind up being, because APUs have traditionally been weak processors with strong graphics, but now that they have strong processors, and I know at least for Ryzen Mobile, those APUs are going to have Vega cores, not Polaris cores. So it could wind up being very interesting depending on how they decide to configure those.
Yeah, well, they're going to be quad cores, right? So most likely, I think everything indicates quad core for the APUs. They've said that publicly, I think, for Raven Ridge. I think they could really... if they can get OEMs and if the power's under control, which is what they got for a laptop, it's gonna be a really disruptive part. I think if you're looking at, say, I don't know. Could you really get 1050 class graphics out of an APU? No, that's probably too high, right? So, too high?
I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, you can get pretty good graphics out of an APU. And these are going to be Vega cores, which we haven't tested yet. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could be highly disruptive to both NVIDIA and Intel in laptops, actually. So,
We'll have to see.
we'll have to see. It's all guessing, which is fun. It's better actually just to guess and speculate than to talk about facts. Facts are no fun.
We got some good questions on the interwebs.
Oh, yes?
Yes, lots of them. Let's
Excellent.
burn through them. AJ asks, how do you guys feel about miner cards hitting AMD's market?
they were all the ones that I saw were 480s, not 580s. So I think I'm glad that they're putting them out to hopefully alleviate some of the pressure on the consumer graphics cards. I think they're probably older GPUs they had sitting around that the display output failed because these cards don't have display outputs. So they were just cards they had sitting around. They can sell them to miners now. Great. I don't know if it'll make a big difference in practice because a big part of the performance calculation for miners is return on investment, and part of that is reselling the card afterwards, and you can't do that with a card that doesn't have display outputs. So there's more cards on the market, but that just means more cards will be bought by miners, I think.
That's just another reason for me to be pissed off at miners. Think about it, because not only made it almost impossible to. Well, go ahead.
But are you actually mad at them? Or are you mad at yourself that you didn't get in on this at the same time as they did?
Well, no, because for one thing, being a miner, setting up a system, getting it all running, that takes effort. So they have actually had the effort, and I have no effort. So I can't be angry over them at that. That's like, okay, you did that. You had the effort. What I'm kind of angry at is Brad just pointed out, they're going to take like, okay, I'm going to buy 8 RX 580s or whatever, 16 or 32 of these RX 580s. I'm going to crank on these things at 100% 24/7 for 6 months. And then I'm going to take each of the individual cards once the whole thing kind of blows up and I've made my $50,000. I've made $50,000. That's like, I could just like give these away to people. But no, then I'm going to go on Craigslist. I'm going to sell in the box, which I've kept. Oh, I'm selling this RX 580 on eBay or Craigslist. Hardly used. It's like hardly used. It's like getting a New York City taxi cab with 800,000 miles on it. That's like, oh, yeah, hardly used car. You know, they're going to put that on Craigslist. You're going to buy it. You're going to run it for about 2 months. It's going to start airing out and blowing up and like, oh. That's why I'm angry.
I was seeing pictures on some subreddit recently that some of them are even shrink wrapping the boxes and trying to sell them as like new.
See, now that's crooked.
That's just not okay.
Jeez.
That's dishonorable.
Wow.
While we're on the topic, there has been a couple of articles recently going around saying that they're starting to lower in price because Ethereum, which was the main driver behind this, its price has plummeted recently.
Oh, good.
So they're starting to see more cards on eBay, secondhand supplies starting to loosen up in stores. There were no sources on that article, and I just checked this morning. You still can't get 1060s or 580s or whatnot for under $600, $700. So
wow,
take that with a grain of salt. You still can't buy cards. So hopefully, maybe it'll lighten up soon. But there are a lot more coins other than Ethereum out there.
Jeez.
So,
Well, yeah, I read the
Bleak
story.
times right now.
But the
for
story
if you
I
wanna
read
build
was
something.
it's hard. So it's getting really hard to do the mining, whereas sort of like all the easy mining is done. So now it's a difficult mining. So the ROI is getting worse. So people are just like giving up already. So, but you're saying that there were no sources for that? Like it hasn't been.
it was said that it was happening, and I think they cited one like European third party reseller.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
in practice, I was looking around this morning because I posted on the PC World Facebook a review of the GTX 1050 this morning because I'm like, hey, you can't buy anything else. Why don't you reread our review of the 1050? And somebody commented that that would have been useful a while ago because cards are starting to lighten back up. So I'm like, oh, sweet. Let me go check that out. And that is not the case whatsoever. Right
Yeah,
now, you still can't buy a card.
so Brad, what you're supposed to write is a story on PC World saying, oh, it's getting harder. So people are starting to sell cards. So then I can go out and get cards while people read that story because they stop buying it, right? So that's weird. That's just weird.
All right, more questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sunny asks, can you build a full build Ryzen 7 under $1,000?
Sure. That's $300 Ryzen 7.
$270.
$270, probably 8 gigs. You're not doing 16 gigs with the price of RAM.
I mean, it depends what you want in the box.
Smallish
I got
SSD.
it totally depends on whether you want a graphics card.
Yeah. And what kind?
Frontier
Yeah.
Edition. Just kidding.
Yeah, I got to say that is a problem because can you get, I mean, that really messes everything up.
I was just going to say, so for most people, they know what Amazon Prime Day is, which is Amazon's made up shopping holiday in the middle of July. And I mean, obviously we covered it. And it was really interesting for me this year going through all the deals to see what was a good deal. And for the first time, I actually listed pre-built desktop systems because you could get something, it's only a 4 gig card, but you could get something with an RX 580, decent budget build for $650. And given the prices right now for DIY builds, that's a good price.
You could get a system with an RX 580 for $650.
Yeah, but it was a 4 gig card. But even still, I mean, these days you can't even get that.
These days, that's like getting the graphics card and getting the rest of the PC for free.
Right. And I mean, and that kind of just says like what the current state of things is right now in the DIY space. It's really kind of depressing.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, when you could get a GPU for $200 to $250, you could definitely do a Ryzen 7 build. But these
Absolutely.
days,
But right now,
Damn.
could you just go older though? Could you buy like a 7 series or, well, I mean, I don't know if you'd want anything older than a 480.
I would
but-
just buy a 1050. I'd just buy a 1050 and wait it out because you can get a 1050 for $100.
So those have not, because I thought 1050's prices had spiked up too and had, no, it's just not.
Not
they
yet.
have recently. No.
no.
Okay.
In fact, I've been seeing mail-in rebates start up for those again. So I think the retailers are trying to push them.
Okay. So Ryzen 7 box, definitely build it. And that's at $100. You could do SSD, 8 gigs of RAM, Ryzen 7, and then just deal with the 1050 for, until the miners go away.
Yeah.
All right, Derek asks, Threadripper 1950X versus Epic 7401P. Same price, more cores, thoughts?
I honestly, for an average consumer, I mean, of course, it's hard to pass judgment because we haven't seen Epic, we haven't tested it, we haven't seen Threadripper, we haven't tested it. But if you're looking at the classic question, higher clock speeds or more core count, it depends on what you do. If you are doing something in your workstation app where you really need all those cores, get the cores. If you don't, and most of your applications are not, heavily multi-threaded, you're going to probably benefit from the higher base clocks of Threadripper over an Epic part. So it's very similar, which it's amazing to say, but it's very similar to, Core i7 2011 V3 versus a Xeon part, because you could get 14, 16 core Xeon parts for $300 on eBay all day, but those things are clocked way down at like 2.5 lower even. So they're not really high clock parts because they're, for workstation servers. And, but if your application uses it, definitely take more cores because, I've done this in a long time, but when I did it with even a 2600K versus an i5 part, so a hyper-threaded Sandy Bridge versus a non-hyper-threaded, you could clock that i5 up to 4 gigahertz, and it would barely be faster than an i7 or i7 2600K stock. So that just kind of tells you clock speed isn't everything, but it depends on your application.
Can you even get Epic chips? I'm not even sure if you can.
I don't know. Plus, I don't know. They don't. And one thing people don't know is Epic chips will not work in X399. They are not compatible. So you would definitely have to buy a server workstation motherboard, and those will not be cheap. So
No.
So you're not really saving money in the end.
no, you're not saving money, but I think it's sort of like what's going to get me more bang for the buck. Very much look at your workloads, look at the cost of the total build. So
You can't build that for $1,000.
no.
Any news on ultra-wide HDR monitors? This is coming from HA on YouTube.
There were the second wave of G-Sync HDR monitors were announced a month or two ago. So the first G-Sync HDR monitors were announced. They still haven't come out yet, but they were announced at CES. They're coming out sometime this summer. And a month or two ago, Acer and Asus, the G-Sync HDR partners, announced 3440 by, I forget the other resolution, but ultra-wide G-Sync HDR monitors. and they're not coming out till sometime closer to the holidays. And I haven't seen that for any other. HDR's coming out slow.
Was that the crazy 49-inch that got announced?
No, that's a Samsung. That thing had an ultra low resolution for what it was. That was a Samsung thing.
Really? Like
These are the holy grail. They have like quantum dots, HDR. The 4K ones are 4K. These ones are 3440 by whatever. They have everything you could ask for. They're going to cost a fortune.
whoa.
But oh so pretty.
Yeah.
Nice. Bat Cadragos. I don't know. What do you think happens if NVIDIA releases the next gen GPUs at the end of the year?
Vega's window will be very short.
Yeah,
Very
I mean-
short.
It could happen at any time. A lot of people are thinking the first quarter of next year, but at this point, the GTX 10 series has already been out since last May, so over a year. And they've already showed off Volta in the high-end form. So if that drops, this fall or whatever, before the holidays, just a couple of months after Vega, you'd have to think that it would outperform it. Because NVIDIA's cards, typically, the last few generations at least, the 70 series card performs as high as the 80 Ti card, the previous one. So like this series, the 1070 performs like the 980 Ti did last year. If they keep that trend up, that'll be impressive. And Vega might not sell much.
although you could almost see I'm saying like they're probably going to preempt the live stream, right? So the AMD live stream on when they announce RX Vega will be preempted by Volta, be coming out like Jensen like. "Rrr."
I know NVIDIA's doing stuff at SIGGRAPH, so
Yeah,
we'll see.
we'll see.
They're
I mean,
always at SIGGRAPH.
they're always. That's why they're. It'd be if Intel ever got as feisty as NVIDIA. I mean, it could change things a little bit, but they don't want to get as feisty. It seems like.
I think they just operate very differently as a corporate culture.
Well, and I guess, to be fair too, they don't have the same. It's not like, hey, Skylake X is, 60% faster than a Ryzen part. It's not. So they can't really it's not really the same scale that they're fighting against them with. So.
All right, a couple more questions. Luis asks, do you think Intel buying giant Altera will make a huge difference in CPUs in the midterm? If so, what should AMD do?
Well, that's more of an enterprise server question. I don't think it really is going to apply to consumers anytime soon, unless they decide to. That would be cool if Intel says so. People don't know Intel bought Altera for $5 billion, which is chump change to Intel, but they make FPGAs, field grade, programmable pin grid arrays or whatever. And what that does is it lets them reprogram functionality into the chip on the fly, so they can, it's like an ASIC, right? So almost. It would be interesting. How would that ever apply to a consumer? I'm thinking, well, if you're Intel, it's we've got Altera. Why don't we configure some of these Core i7s with an FPGA configured for mining? And then be like, oh yeah, look at this. Our Core i7's mining, as fast as whatever GPU. I mean, that would be a changer, right? Although you can't run eight CPUs in one box, but if you can do that on the CPU you have, but it really doesn't have much application I see at this point to consumers, and it's very much going to go into servers and it's going to compete with all the Google TPUs and all that stuff.
Okay, two more questions. The second to last one is from Mohammed. He's going to hold your feet to the fire, Gordon.
All right.
He's got a problem with you. You guys got duped hard when you did the comparison between FE and Titan XP in gaming. You found no difference? What the hell? Titan XP is 40% faster than Vega FE.
Okay, so
Comments?
what you're talking about is a video that we did, which AMD came in. They had two boxes set up. One with a Titan XP, not the XP, but this is XP. All right. Latest generation XP card, the identical boxes. Second one had an FE, pre-release drivers and everything. So the question was, could you tell the difference? And, honestly, and again, I think what we said in the video clearly, you know what? I swear to God, if I sat down 10 people from that office outside in front of similar setups, you couldn't tell. I mean, we were, and we were playing on wide aspect ratios, but you're looking at maybe 3.5 4 megapixels or something. You're not talking about pushing, 4K video. So on the given setup which is a wide aspect monitor, which a lot of gamers are going to use, could you tell? I mean, it's very much like, could you honestly tell the difference between a Core i5 and a Core i7 in using it every day? Or
they did the same
7.
thing with Ryzen.
And the same thing.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, everybody, we all think we have this heightened sense and we can tell the difference. You would be really surprised at what you really can't tell the difference at. You think you can tell the difference, but if I sat you down with an Optane hard drive and an SSD, you could not tell the difference, right? So it would be. So I honestly think I was being honest. I couldn't tell the difference. But again, you're talking about playing, 3-4 megapixel gaming on a wide aspect ratio monitor. If I put you in front of it, I bet you couldn't tell the difference either. And I'm not joking, because it doesn't matter at that level. You're looking like, it's like, can you tell the difference in a 1080 Ti and a 1070 playing on a 1600p monitor? Probably not. I think
I can.
I don't know. No way.
Were those our monitors, or did they bring the monitors?
They brought the monitors in. So because they're matching wide aspect ratio.
And that highlights the importance, in my opinion, of why you should always take vendor supplied information with a grain of salt when you talk about benchmarks and stuff. Because in a setup like that, I wouldn't be surprised if the monitor was probably like a 75 hertz monitor. So
it was,
or 60 hertz, who knows? So in Doom, I believe is what you played.
I played about 3 different games. We played a DX11, DX12, and Vulcan game.
Battlefield,
but in case
Doom.
that resolution, if it was capped at 75 frames per second, both of them would be maxing out that monitor, and there's no difference.
Right.
So that's why you always take vendor supplied stuff with a grain of salt.
Right. And I thought I was pretty clear for these two things, given those circumstances. Yeah. But, this is very much like Ryzen 7, right? Are you going to be playing your games at 180 frames a second at 1080p?
Well, they did a similar thing with Ryzen. I did it at the Radeon or AMD thing in December. They had to get together to show all the editors, all the stuff coming up. And they had Ryzen 7 system with Titan XP running next to a 6900K system with a Titan XP running Battlefield 1. And it was the same idea. No frame rate counters, no nothing. Just play the 2 games and see how they feel. That's a technique that they're using a bunch these days. I wouldn't be surprised if that event going on in Budapest today or whatever I was saying, and there's another one coming up in the US later this week, are the same kind of scenario where they have a couple of systems set up next to each other, but the monitor caps out at a certain point. So.
But that also gets, of course, some people see that purely as a marketing tool. There is an argument for, Roger Kadori, we had him on at CES. He's like, look, his goal is to build a sub $1,000 4K box. And, we talked very much about ultra versus high. Like, is there really any difference between an ultra and a high, right, in gaming today? Their argument is like, no, not really, because developers are not putting the effort into making this ultra to really give you that much in ultra. So do you really need to be, and this is their pitch. It's like, do you really need to be focused on ultra frame rates? Does it matter?
So to me,
I always play on high. Sorry. I always play on high.
I always play on ultra.
It just sounds to me that what we're talking about here, like the question versus the answer, is the difference between subjective real world experience versus looking at the numbers. So, I mean, if we don't even really have any of the numbers yet.
Right, we don't.
So it's really hard to say how the two are going to compare against each other. But it is very possible, like with many things in life, you can see the numbers and know there's a difference. But then when you actually use it, you don't actually notice the difference.
Right. But, again, I would never base any buying decision without seeing the numbers, because I still want to see the numbers. Because we all think that.
Of course.
If one is faster, if it has higher frame rates, but I can't tell the difference, in theory, it should last longer, right? Because you're getting more performance.
Right.
Of course, I don't know. Is that true? Because I saw plenty of YouTube videos that no, that wasn't true. Like FX parts were actually faster than Sandy Bridge parts if you play a current game now, right?
Everything on YouTube is true, Gordon. Everything. Because
back then I was telling everybody buy Sandy Bridge. It's a better part, right? For future proofing. And, the argument I've seen and somebody really does need to sit down and do this, where they play today's games on an old 2600K and an FX part to see which one is actually better. So
Mohammed follows up and asks, how much money did AMD give you to say this? I'm just kidding. He didn't say it. He said thanks for the answer, but he still thinks it's a cheap tactic from AMD.
Well, it's not what we would have wanted. If we had total control and they said, here's a card, or if we could have bought one at the time, like Ryan and Gamers Nexus did. Of course, they weren't available at that point. Yeah, that is ultimately better. You have control of it. And I said in the video, we get these in our own machine. That's where it matters. But, it's not the greatest way. It's not optimal, I think, is the way they like to say things. So
and something to keep in mind, too, about all these is that 4K monitors today, like you said, they're aiming, hopefully, Roger Kaduri said, for 4K. 4K monitors pretty much top out at 60 frames per second. So it's the same idea, capping the monitor. If you go over 60 frames per second, regardless how far it is, you're not really seeing much different. So.
Yeah, but no, I would still want to see the numbers no matter. We all would, right? Since we're all reviewers, we want to know the numbers. We want to have control over it. So, but I got to say, their point is you can't tell the damn difference. And it's true. And it is true. So
in certain scenarios.
Yeah, it's fixed. If they were like 4K wide aspect ratios or 5K panels, that would be interesting. Of course, we don't know how they perform there, but that's definitely pushing the card harder at 5K. So
remains to be seen.
All right.
So the very last question comes in from
John, who says, "Get out and go do some work."
No, he said
that was a good question by Mohammed, though. I'm glad he asked that.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, good to cover. Is from our associate producer Noah here. He's got a question.
Gordon, do you think life exists except on our planet, like on other planets, not just ours?
Do you think life exists on other planets, not just ours, Gordon?
Yes, but they're just avoiding us because because of what we are. Actually, you could, like, if I were an alien, I would just fly a flying saucer like right through San Francisco, right through no one would even notice because they would be looking at their phone. Right? You're like, oh my God. 10 years ago, it would be like, oh my God, is it like an alien's just like, no, nobody would even know. They would like, oh man, did you see that ad for the food trucks? I thought it was a flying saucer. Yeah, no, it must have been an ad for a food truck. Yeah.
It's a new Uber. Yeah, flying Uber service.
Yeah, no. So yes, there is clearly life in the universe outside us, but they are avoiding us because wouldn't you avoid us? So
what do you think, Noah? What do you think?
No.
Oh, Noah thinks no. Okay. Well, yeah, you heard it here first. So cool. Let's wrap it up then. No more questions.
Definitely, because they've turned off the air in here. It's about 80 degrees now.
I think that's John's indirect way of telling us to get out.
Go do some work. Okay, I'm going to ring us out. Check back in 2 weeks for your fix of PC Talk and the Full Nerd for audio listeners.
Next week, special episode next week.
Oh, special episode next week. Brad will actually be here in the office.
Oh, you ruined this.
But you know what we're going to do is we're gonna actually build a box so he can sit inside the box.
We'll just have a frame for him.
Yeah,
wouldn't that be funny? And
I'll bring Superman with me and set him up behind me. And
there
everything.
You go. Perfect.
That's after he gets those airplanes in off the runway. That thing. So check back in 1 week for a special episode where we'll have Brad here in the office for your fix of PC Talk on the Full Nerd. For audio listeners, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Send questions and comments to the Full Nerd at PCWorld.com. You just heard us read a couple. Thanks for coming. I'm Gordon Ung with Brad Charkis.
Adios.
Elaine Yee.
Bye, everyone.
And Adam Patrick Murray and special Shineheart executive, Shineheart Wigs. No.
Yes. Thank you, Noah, for helping me out. And thank you guys for all your great questions. We'll see you next week.